Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody. I love to see faces. Thank you. I am the owner operator of Shepherdess Land and Livestock based out of the Ojai Valley. I also create opportunities for folks to train on the ground and prescribe grazing through Grazing School of the West as a resource for folks really trying to learn the nuts and bolts from an operator and other operators. I'm happy to collaborate with our folks at UCANR. And I've been in the work for about fifteen years on and off. I've dabbled. Right now, I'm currently operating. I downsized at the end of last season. I'm operating with about 200 head, about to start grazing contracts. We've been in business. Shepherdess has been in business for about 5 years. And I'm honored to talk about the most fun topic of the day is the cash money and where it's coming from to fuel and feed and fund our projects that we are all eager to participate in. So, without further ado, thank you, Morgan, for the handing off of introduction. And I just did want to say a call out to Laura. I see that you're there. I've met Laura through Grazing School of the West. So I hope to learn a little bit about who I get to talk to tonight with. So feel free. I do like to engage, so we'll have moments of time where we can pop out off of mute, and I'll let Morgan kind of steer the ship as much as possible. I told him he can be my border collie because I can definitely start chasing sheep and goats and storytelling. So, uh, Morgan,
I'll do my
feel free
best.
to bite my heels.
Thanks, Cole. And it's also worth noting that in addition to all this work that Cole has done in targeted grazing and in grazing education, Cole has also been a very active member in or is a past member of the Rangeland Management Advisory Committee, which is a statewide committee that advises the Board of Forestry on rangeland policy and activities. And so there's a wealth of knowledge right there alone beyond all the more normal targeted grazing work experience that Cole has. Um, so I think we definitely have the right person for this for this topic. And to get things started, gonna ask Cole a question on why are we even talking about grants when we're talking about targeted grazing in California?
Fantastic. It's a good start. I'm going to share my screen because I actually have a data point, Morgan, to share. Okay. Uh, so, like Morgan did mention, I forgot to share. I have been sitting on the California Range Management Advisory Committee for the last several years. I think that seat was about 4 years. And uh, through the Range Management Committee, Advisory Committee, we have informed some of the policy that this funding that you see right here um, has supported. So we'll talk a little bit about that after this slide. So why are we talking about grants? Well, because grants right now through the state, through really two big funnels of cash money, through the Board of Forestry and Fire Prevention, through CAL FIRE, specifically wildfire resilience grants and Prop 4 money from climate investments. So the depending on what exactly you're looking at in the numbers, there is a lot of money, 100 to 300 million dollars in competitive grants annually, as well as multi-year types of grants. And uh, in that tranche of dollars, prescribed grazing, where I'm going to use prescribed grazing, and I'll tell you a little bit why prescribed grazing kind of as an analog to targeted grazing, but prescribed grazing is directly funded through these grants. So we'll go a little bit more about why we are not necessarily talking about us being the grant the folks who are going after the grants, but we are beneficiaries of organizations, agencies that apply for the grants and receive the grants. So we're talking about grants because I feel that it is the foundation for our industry's growth and the opportunity is there. But guess what? We're kind of still in the Wild West era of targeted grazing. It really has taken momentum since I've been in this work. I've known Dan Macon for of about a decade and a half. And I think we could both agree that a lot has changed within the last 2 decades. But we're still in this Wild West moment. I feel strongly that the state funding for wildfire resilience and climate are really going to be a stabilizing force for the type of work that we are doing. So I wanted to share with you a little bit. First, why are we talking about this? Well, the money is what's going to propel the opportunity for us to even be grazers. Of course, it's only one component of several, like animal husbandry, like understanding production. But the business element is really the unique aspect of this work in land and livestock. So, why prescribe grazing? Well, we got two bills passed within the last 3 years. The first one, oops, the first one, AB 297, which actually put prescribed grazing in public resource code. That actually now means that prescribed grazing is called out for from the Board of Forestry. These are prescribed grazing is now looked at as not just a novel thing, but something that is directly mandated to be funded as an eligible recipient or an eligible practice for at-scale wildfire prevention. That's huge. This is huge. We're the first state to have language like this, a service-based grazing um, practice and approach that is called out by the state. That means that grant funding can directly fund the work that we are doing. And that was AB 297. Before AB 297, excuse me, or after AB 297 is SB 675. Now this one's really important because this one um, really begins to be the mechanism in which we will be the folks that are our clients, our future clients, are going to have more support and pathways to this funding through the development of regional grazing guidelines, really to hand hold in some capacity how to work with us. We are not normal contractors, right? We're not construction. Uh, Sometimes, depending on how deep you're in, you might find contracts that read like construction contractor contracts, service contracts. We are not those. We can't put our sheep and goats on a shelf and call it and let our equipment sit. Um, so we are very different, and our clients really need to support on the education and awareness and how this works, as well as expectations, et cetera, et cetera. So policy plays a really big part in the grant landscape. It is the mechanism in which monies are allocated. And it doesn't matter if our leadership changes within the state, the Board of Forestry is still going to be working to prevent and fight wildfires, right? This is a bipartisan issue. It doesn't matter. Wildfire doesn't care about where we sit. So dollars will still be going to it, and now we have it in law. So that's the really fun stuff, everybody. I got through the policy stuff pretty easy. So that's why we're talking.
And Cole, I have to say that it really is hard to overemphasize how big of a deal it is to have that in written into law. It's just considering prior attitudes among state agencies, specifically CAL FIRE or especially CAL FIRE, that they have had in the past on the use of grazing. It's always been relegated as an extremely minor, not important, not effective uh, tool, and largely not even considered as a tool for reducing fire fuel loads. And so this is a pretty big change. A couple of questions. Well, one question looks like Dan got it answered about cattle. Question from Martin about is this pertain to cattle prescribed grazing? And then Dan answered, yeah, it pertains to all types of livestock species. It doesn't prescribe the type of livestock. Good. Thanks, Dan, for
That's right.
answering that.
Yes. Yes.
And also, you say it's like the Wild West, and I like that description. And probably you're saying this it is the Wild West because we're very early in this, and a lot of the rules, regulations, structure, infrastructure is all still in the works while targeted grazing is happening. So it's still in development.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I will say I do want to say on why is it still in development? It's still in development because a lot of our clients are trying to understand how this works to actually write proposals for these large grants in such a way that makes sense.
Yeah.
And what I find is that many of us operators end up doing a lot of consulting and to support these agencies and small orgs that are trying to hire us. So I think it's the Wild West because really the knowledge and awareness of how prescribed grazing works or targeted grazing works is still being developed. And I think we still have some room to go and ways to go. And really us out there on the front lines on the ground are the ones that are educating the folks that are essentially hiring us.
Right. Yeah. Good point.
Mhm.
Good. All right. Thanks, Cole. And just a word of note to everyone. When Cole is putting up a slide, there's a setting you can make on your screen if you don't know this already. But if you go up into the upper right-hand corner, you might see a square with some little squares. And if you choose when the slide is up, side-by-side gallery or side-by-side speaker presentation, it'll make the slides bigger. So just a word of note on there on how it appears on your screen. All right, Cole. Moving on in the targeted grazing world in California, and you mentioned this in your prior description about entities receiving the grants. Can you just say something about those entities, what those entities are, who are receiving the grants, and also what types of jobs they typically have in the targeted grazing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, you'll hear a lot about CAL FIRE because I would say CAL FIRE is the leading force with the largest funding streams through the California Wildfire Prevention's grant. I'll mention them a lot. So, the California Wildfire Prevention Grant comes from California, from the state. And the way that it works for those funds to fund prescribed grazing or targeted grazing is that a eligible entity must apply for that grant. They receive the grant and then they come out and they solicit and give notification for prescribed herbivory. Prescribed herbivory is often used in this space. The prescribed grazing is often just a component of these larger grants. So just mind you, not all of these grants are just prescribed grazing. It's a multitude of things from hand crews, mastication, prescribed burn, et cetera, et cetera. So CAL FIRE has these large grants. Which entities are the ones that are using those monies? Well, regional conservation, resource conservation districts are quite common to be one of the recipients of the California Wildfire Prevention Grants Awards. Uh, um, regional fire safe councils as well. So there's the California Fire Safe Council. That's actually where Laura and I met. The California Fire Safe Council. There's hundreds of them all over the state, really organized by communities. And fire safe councils, as a 501(c)(3), are eligible organizations. Other 501(c)(3) organizations that have the mission to uh, do good in protection and can also be in environmental preservation, conservation, restoration, are also eligible. Um, so I would say fire safe councils. As a grazer, it's incredibly important to know these organizations. So I started off with the Resource Conservation District, your regional fire safe councils, land trusts and land conservancies in your region, municipalities, a city or county or water district or electric company, power company. Uh, I mean, you can kind of run the gamut of everything that's not a private landowner can essentially apply for or be recipients of these grants. So municipalities, fire safe councils, RCDs, I get a lot of questions around from private clients who are like, we really want grazing, but they only have an acre to 2 acres. They ask, well, how do we get these grants that you're telling us about? We have a homeowners association. That won't cut it. Homeowners associations and landowner groups, unless they have the 501(c)(3) status as a nonprofit, they are uneligible. At that point in time, our recommendation really should be reach out to your local fire safe council. Or have you thought about organizing together as a fire safe council? That is an incredible way for private landowners to come together to create a nonprofit organizing body such as a fire safe council to apply and receive these grants from state level. Cal Fire is not the only grantor of these types of funds. California Coastal Commission has funds as well. Um, really, more the criteria and the goals of the projects are, of course, uh, a bit different as you can imagine, but climate resilience as much as wildfire resilience are being funded, and that is the environmental component of the whole wildfire safety piece. And ecology and balance is a fire safe, fire ready ecology, is what we like to say. So we're focusing on the ecological side as much as we're focusing on the objectives of our fire compadres in the fire departments, et cetera. So those are some of the folks that are hiring or that are going after the grants.
And good, that's awesome, Cole. And so the fire safe councils, it's worth noting that there are many fire safe councils throughout the state, but they are still being formed, as you mentioned, in situations where landowners kind of group together and help form a fire safe council and get that incorporated to get that to be eligible for these grants. Um, how about federal dollars? What types of federal dollars might be available out there? And I see that Ashley put in something in the chat about having experience going after federal dollars too. But
Ah, Laura also just puts a link in for a resource. The California Fire Foundation
Mhm.
also um, is something to note. I highly suggest noting all of these and really going and sleuthing the websites to really understand what the communication is to the public and to other stakeholders. As we are contractors, we really do need to understand the landscape and space that we're working in. understanding what's going on and policy level is really important as well as what's happening organizationally. Thank you for the contributions. Keep on throwing them in there. I'm just sitting here as an expert in my little world, and y'all have experience that I can learn from you. So make my hour and a half juicy. Okay.
Well, how about is there are there some new sources of funding that are on the horizon?
Okay, so we just jumped to federal dollars. Well, guess what? They don't pay as well.
Mhm.
Uh, actually, it's my understanding one of the largest prescribed grazing programs in the state originated with the East Bay Regional Parks District that suffered tremendous fires. The East Bay, tremendous fires in the late 1980s, I believe. And at that time, they started receiving FEMA funds, I think, for recovery, but also for prevention. So FEMA has been a source. I'm unfamiliar with that since I've been in business here in Southern California, even though I've been a part of the recovery efforts of the catastrophic fires of last year. However, NRCS has a program. There is the EQIP program, and these are for producers that have farm records with the FSA. So that means you have a home base, right? And you have a farm record. You're able to apply for the EQIP grants that have a number of SWEEP. These are all acronyms that are annoying and you can look up on your own time. Maybe agency people are here. I don't mean to offend anybody in the acronyms, but there is one called the CSP, I believe, and it's basically conservation ranching
Yeah.
practices.
Conservation Security Program.
There it is. There it is. And one of the eligible practices that the NRCS will compensate for is prescribed herbivory. So that essentially means with your own farm record, or should you have a farm record on one of the places you graze, you could get compensation if you are eligible for the CSP. I have not done that. I'm starting to work on that because the new thing that's here through federal funding through the NRCS that's being managed through the NRCS is the Regenerative Agriculture Pilot Program funding. That was just announced, and many of you may already be in the know. I just got told yesterday that we were funded $36,000 in a 3-year contract for practices that we are already doing on the ranch. So, if you have a home base, you have an FSA record, you could essentially be getting paid for your prescribed or targeted grazing on your own home base because it is eligible under the this new regenerative ag pilot program that is an umbrellaed by NRCS.
And just for those who don't know, FSA, not engaged in the USDA programs, it's the Farm Service Agency. So every county or almost every county has an FSA, Farm Service Agency office that's USDA. So you can go to that office, get your information, and look at the programs that they offer, see which are applicable to you. All right, good. Thank you, Cole, for that. And while we are working while you're talking in the future in the background, I'm gonna look for this regenerative ag pilot project and see if we can find some information or a link to slip in there. Okay, moving on to like how you engage with agencies. Hey, I know you have some slides on this, so if you can tell us your process for agency engagement. And by agencies, I mean like there are all those agencies you said who are recipients, eligible recipients for grant funds. So can you go through your process of engaging
Yeah,
with?
absolutely, absolutely. I might be preaching to the choir to some of you who are already engaging in this process. Um, chime in if you have any, hey, I tried this at some point, or if you do something different. But this is how I have engaged in grazing contracts that have derived from funding from grants. And I will say that I would say about 50% of my annual contracts are grant funded contracts, often multi-season contracts as well. And that is one of the benefits of these grants is that it can be multi-year. And we love that for stability. At least I do. Okay, so how do I know about these? Well, when I started my business, I decided I wanted all of the players, anybody that's in land stewardship, anybody that is in the fire space, community organizations that have a really good, tight knit network to a neighborhood or my little township. I introduced myself and my business and essentially did a little bit of marketing or solicitation. Just hey, we're here, we're a new service provider in town, and we're providing these services. Let us know if there's ever a project. So I do invite folks to actually just really, depending on your region, find the organizations and associations that are these recipients to larger grants or have their own fundraising mechanisms for, say, a community supported grazing program, which I can talk a little bit more about. Uh, so get ahead of it. We want these folks to know that we exist, and that takes a little bit of work on the upfront because if they don't know about us, it's going to be hard for them to find us unless you've done your due diligence and getting on a directory such as the California Wool Growers Association directory or Match.graze, which is kind of like a grazer's dating service. It's not specific to targeted grazing. However, targeted grazing, graziers and landowners who do lease land, it's a very interesting and useful tool. I would go check that out, match.graze or things matchgraze.com. Um, that is a place that clients can find you. But really, we want to make our future clients' jobs easy to find us. So take that step and go and introduce yourself. Really quick email, get on vendors lists for your local county, city, municipalities. You want to get on that list because, again, you want to make it easy for the person whose job it is to get an RFP out. You want to be that first email or first call about the solicitation. So the opportunity seeking is the first and foremost. Also, if you sign up to the newsletters from these organizations or from CAL FIRE themselves, you'll get to actually be real time seeing what your future clients are seeing on grant funding rounds, knowing when the funds are, when are the grant proposals due, and when are the awards announced. That's the next secret is CAL FIRE announces what organizations have received grant funding in those summaries of those awarded grants often often say prescribed grazing or prescribed herbivory. You get the dollar amount of the whole project. Sometimes it even says the acreage amount. You have the information of how those grant funds are being how they're flowing. That's the first step, of course. Once they know you're there, you get that notification and you get an invitation to submit an RFP. This is a really important piece to the whole component because you really need to become an expert on exactly what the goals are. Targeted grazing is targeted. Prescribed grazing is prescriptive. We need to know what that target is, what the goal is, what the prescription is trying to address. And the RFP is our roadmap really to understand what it is they're trying to do. And that helps us to make some internal decisions, some gut check decisions. And that also helps us to start thinking operationally, logistically, creatively of, okay, could this project work? Um, this is often the time where there is invitation for clarifying questions. If you have a question that's not on that RFP, start engaging. You want that person whose job it is to answer those questions to know you by first name, maybe even your middle name. It's funny because it calls my middle name. Uh, and so that's a really important part. And that's your roadmap. There's often a site visit requirement. Go to the site visit. Sometimes it's required, sometimes it isn't. Go and see the thing. Also, you can, of course, use tools online. I use Land IQ. I pay for it, but it gives me incredible layers of some of you already probably use it for Onyx Hunt and other tools, but I really like Land IQ. I can go in and I can understand topography. I can understand how water moves. I can even see historical fires in a given area. It's really great to understand a full landscape of a site even before we go and see it on the ground. Also, remember when we do site visits, we're often not going at the time of year in which we are hired to graze. So we kind of have to look into the future of seasonal changes. What is it going to be like? That's a great time to start asking questions of what common species are there, and are there targeted species that they want to reduce or sequester, and what species are they trying to protect? This is a good time to look at that. Also, really great time to start understanding who you may be working with, your point of contact with that agency. It'd be great to even know who they work with within the organization. You might bump into a neighbor who may potentially be able to feed you some water with a hose over their backyard. It's a really great opportunity at a site visit to kind of just get the vibe. Um, and also you can kind of understand the personalities that you may be working with and how does that neighborhood feel if you are in a neighborhood situation. So, think outside of the box. You're not just there to look at the scope of the project, but you're there also to kind of vibe the situation and have a moment of visualizing what would it be like for my operation to be here. Oh, my camp trailer at the end of a cul-de-sac with the generator running that's 20 feet away from these people's front door. Might need to really like, rethink how I do X, Y, and Z. For example, from site to visit, we start developing a bid based off of the information we've gathered all the way from the very beginning when we're doing our homework and our opportunity seeking, which means we need to understand an organization, a community, and the goals and objectives of the grant funding that that organization has received. We take all of that information from the RFP, from that beginning phase of the opportunity seeking, and our site visit. And then that's when we pull it all together with our prescription. How long will this project take given the number of animals I have or could obtain? What is the labor required? What's the transportation? Not just the animals there, but getting your butt there and back all the time should there be the need for you to be on site or get up in the middle of the night and run over and figure something out. Um, Fuel costs are insane. Take that into consideration. all of our uh, all of our costs are going up. Therefore, I invite you to charge more this season. Just do it. um, uh, Insurance requirements. That's a big cost. You might have to level up your insurance coverage for these types of jobs. These working with the government, we cannot cut any corners. Everything has to be above board. So if you're not above board right now, consider your own context and the capacity of where you are at. If you were your own labor, that is a different thing. You are an owner, but you have to be very careful on your labor component, be it a 1099 or an employee workers' comp, et cetera, et cetera. You have to be above board and insurance requirements we will go through.
Hey, Cole, that's awesome. Um, that's a lot. It's a lot of information, and it sounds like the key is to be proactive in getting your name out there, talking to the RCDs, the counties, the municipalities, the cities, land trusts, all these entities where you feel like you can, within the range where you feel like you can operate and just get your name on their list so that you can be a known provider, service provider, and and then following through with this process. Um, what are your thoughts on the level of skills and experience that are generally needed in order to even consider some of these RFPs?
Well, you know, I would like to think that we wear so many hats and we're interesting humans who to be in this work. So many of us have come from various backgrounds in work and experience and education and things. And I really find that whatever our background is, we have skill sets to bring into this as a very unique and creative business. So I think knowing what your strong suits are and your skill sets, what your skill sets are, is really important because it will quickly be revealed where your shortcomings are. And that's a really good time to look at your capacity and recognize, is this for what I am not great at? Is it a place in which I put time into developing those skills, or do I bite the bullet and put in the time to get better at it? Or do I start looking at, can I collaborate with someone who has compatible skill sets or skill sets that I do not have? That's a really important thing because the moment you start pursuing a project and potentially getting a project when you are not fully equipped, it's trying to run a quad uphill in the rain with a two-wheel drive and only three tires. You're starting off in a deficit. So gut checking really where you're at in your capacity is really important. And it's a fine line and straddle of being a yes gal and a no guy. You got to you kind of have to do both. And so in terms of skill sets, remember we're service providers. That means we are working with customers. We have clients. And guess what? As public servants, the public is also who we are serving. So we actually really do have to have good communication skills. And if you're not good at that, it's something to really consider if we are grazing in populated
Mhm.
areas.
Mhm.
So that is a component. On the business side, we have to be very professional, very organized, and very calm and cool when the crap hits the fan. So that's also another thing. If you're a hothead, find your spot in the hole, and get out of the front and center and find somebody who's good at kind of playing crowd control. Those are some of those examples. In terms of scale, scale is a really big piece of of this conversation because these grants can be pretty big, right? They can be pretty big. Some of us start with only doing 5-acre jobs, 2-acre jobs, 20-acre jobs. These jobs can be up to 100 acres plus. Wow, we want to give it a shot, but we don't have those animals or we don't have that capacity. This is a really interesting moment in time where we can start thinking about collaborative, cooperative ways of approaching this work and actually rising together as operators instead of being cutthroat, competitors. I think that's really important. I think that we have an opportunity to do business in a new way as a unique agricultural service provider. So I think that in terms of skill set, one of those skill sets is, well, conflict mediation is really important and mitigation, but also the ability to negotiate and be fair and recognizing that if we help each other in this industry, if we go after a contract together, for example, we could actually uh, be have uh, mutual benefits to doing so. And I'll touch in a little bit on that on a project that, quite frankly, is too big for my britches for this season. And instead of going neck to neck with another grazer who shares the same valley that I live in, we decided to go at it as collaborators. We call each other competitive colleagues. We decided to come together as two grazing operators to serve our community together. And now it is our job to really come up with clear written agreements of how we are going to um, do this job. And let me tell you, before we got the put the RF or the proposal in, we did dial in the agreement. So that's very important.
So, kind of falling back to the description of the Wild West in the targeted grazing world in California, it's so a lot of the agencies, organizations that are hiring targeted grazers, this may be their first experience, right? And I think it's really important. What you just said is, well, what you said is really important to understand your capacity to do a job. Because if you're not well equipped or sufficiently equipped to do the job, you can find yourself underwater in a hurry and perhaps doing a poor job, which leaves a sour taste in their mouth. And they may think then that, well, we tried targeted grazing and it didn't work for and this reason, or it was a disaster or something like that. And that's not what the industry needs, black eyes. So I think yeah, it is really important to be able to right size, understand the right size job for you and understand the details of the RFP so that you know you have the confidence that you can do the job.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Morgan, for pointing that out. If there's one of 8 messages I could imbue and convey tonight, it would be you are representing a whole entire industry, not just your own operation. And if you fall flat on your face on on a job and it goes south, it could really be damaging. It might take a whole entire new generation within an organization to consider prescribed grazing or targeted grazing. So my I want to echo that. Be honest with where you are at. And yes, we are hungry when we're starting, but we need to be honest with where we are at. And crap always happens on jobs. It's how we leave a job. It's not necessarily what goes south during a job. It's how we leave it. How did we repair it? The customer is always right. We leave it always right. We try to leave with new friends. And we also try to be understanding and respectful of the landscape of this industry, which means know who's had a contract before you go in there, and not even knowingly, you underbid folks that may have had that contract for 5 years. You have to really recognize that this is the Wild West. It's new, but there have been operators, multi-generational operators in some instances that have had jobs who have lost jobs to new operators who didn't fully understand the pricing and bidding thing and underbid. And some of these organizations, most of them have to go with lowest bidder. The lowest bidder is not always the most qualified. So just be mindful and aware that the impacts might not just be your business, but it could be relationships. It could be an organization's opinion about prescribed grazing, and it also could impact other businesses, which would not bode well if should you start with burned bridges. There's always room for repair, but just recognize how important relationships are and understanding the full landscape.
Good. Excellent. Thank you, Cole. And once again, on the going referring to these RFPs, are there some questions that should be asked that may not be in the RFP? So the questions that a targeted grazer should be asking or keep in mind.
Yes, there are many of them, and I think on the note of what questions to ask in the RFP process or site visit process, I think that this is a great time. If anybody wants to share with me what their voice sounds like with a question right now, I'm inviting any question because I know I can just keep on going. But if anyone has like a specific or whatnot, I'm happy to answer that before I give you the inside scoop. Is that okay, Morgan?
Yeah, yeah. And feel free to unmute yourself. Just a time check. We have 40 minutes to go before we have to wrap this up. Uh,
Okay.
so yeah,
How are we doing, Morgan, on our itinerary?
we probably ought to speed it up a bit, but I think we'll have the next topics we'll be able to move through quickly.
Got it. All right. If there is no one who has a question directly, that's fine. I'll give you what the inside scoop on the questions that you may have, but you didn't know you needed. Uh, So I think it's really important in that discovery opportunity seeking phase to understand how long has this project, is this the first year? Has there been several years? It's really great to ask, how was your experience in the past? Did you have any issues in the past that we should be aware of? Sh- Uh, that's a really good question to ask because there are non-disclosed issues that may have arisen in a particular site that they're not going to write on the RFP. For example, uh, sketchy neighbors, for example. Um, Another one is a mysterious toxicity that could not be figured out at a particular site, but the agency is still hiring prescribed grazing, even though 20 animals or 30 animals were lost the year before and the year before that. That is really, really important information to know if a previous grazing operator lost animals at a site. Why? Was there any history of predation? Where was that predation? At what time of year was that predation? That's a very important one. In terms of water, this should be stipulated in the RFP, but the expectation of who pays for water if you need to get a water meter from a municipality, from a city or county, that's very important to ask. Um, those are excuse me, the historical information is very important to ask about.
How about funding, stability of funding, funding source?
In the RFP,
Is that usually provided in the RFP?
it should say, I'll quickly go over the RFP sample, Morgan. And in that RFP, often RFPs that are grant funded, reimbursement schedule, that is very good. Yes, we will talk about the terms of contracts, or the projects. There's usually a background about the project. The project was funded by X organization, grant, whatever. A 3 year period. We are doing 2 years of prescribed grazing, whatever. It should tell you that. If it doesn't, find out the period and term of the grazing contract. Also, note, even if you find out how much they were awarded, it's incredibly unlikely that that is your all of the money that's going to prescribed grazing, targeted grazing, because we will talk a little bit more about this. The environmental review process for all state-funded projects requires this environmental review component, which costs a lot of cash money. So that's also an important thing. So funding stability is the longevity of the contract and an opportunity for multiple years locked in.
Perfect. And yeah, regarding the RFP example that you have, I think we can, you good covering that when we talk about the bidding?
I'm sorry, I was just reading a comment. What was that?
Okay. The RFP example that you have, you good with holding that until we talk about bidding?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
You tell me if you want me to jump
Okay.
into that. You just let me know.
Let's move on
Okay.
to a topic. Well, Ashley just chimed in about the next topic,
Yeah.
which is some of the financial aspects of utilizing these grant funds. And if you can describe some of the process of obtaining payments for grant funded projects, such as a reimbursement schedule, do you invoice? Is it fixed in the contract when that's going to, how that's going to happen, when that's going to happen? Can you say more about that? What's perhaps
Yes.
typical and what you've experienced?
Yes. So organizations, agencies that have received grants often already received grants and have had prescribed grazing already have a grazing contract template typically. It's really important to review the template, to review the contract to see what the terms of payment are. I really strongly, highly advise redlining a contract, meaning taking that contract, redlining what doesn't work for you and sending it back to see if there's negotiation room. And I got to tell you, insider, there are prepayment opportunities through the CAL FIRE wildfire prevention grants. That new policy actually gives prepayments now for these projects. So these organizations that are hiring us have the ability to invoice early for before the work is even ever done, which means we can ask for a deposit. We need a mobilization fee is what it's called. It's it's totally, you're totally in the right to ask about we often require a mobilization fee of X, Y, and Z. It could be a flat cost to cover your first, couple weeks plus transportation, et cetera, et cetera. Really important to look at the terms of the contract to see what the payment schedule is that they suggest. If there's nothing in there about the terms of payment, I strongly suggest, based off of the scope or how big the project is, anything really over four digits, I would say anything above 15, $20,000. I think it's about a $10,000 threshold before they, okay. No, 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 no. I might be getting off, but uh anything above 20 grand, I'll ask for a mobilization fee. Anything over 3 to 4 weeks, I'll ask for a mobilization fee. Anything a 6 digit contract, I will ask for a mobilization fee of 30%. 30% at midway of the contract, which is like the halfway point either in duration or acreage, and then upon completion with a 30-day term. Sometimes they provide you the contract if they've already had grazing. If they're brand new, let me tell you, I just provided a contract template to a new client that was a recipient of an award. So I mean, I've been essentially consulting for this Fire Safe Council and supporting them by giving them a contract, which is quite nice because it has my terms laid out. And because I knew about that policy bit on prepayment, I could ask with confidence that they can get me a 30% down 3 months even before I even start grazing.
And Ashley, thanks for putting in your comment about advances up to 6 months of anticipated costs. So thanks. That's very helpful. All right, so talking about uh, cash flow. What is the common time frame from the time you invoice, provide an invoice to the receipt of the payment?
Every agency is different. You will
Mhm.
get to know the personality of an organization or an agency or a municipality very quickly. Really important to ask up front from the beginning. What is your invoicing process? Can I provide to you the certificate of insurance, your COI, that you are going to ask me for? Oh, can I give you an invoice now so you have it on file? It's actually really great to just upfront offer them what they need for processing because it does take time. I have not been paid by a very large city or county in the state of California for over 6 months, and it's a big chunk of change. So that it's really this was an odd situation, but it's not uncommon for things to go past a 30 day. It could go up to 90 days. Ask about that from up front. Usually the people that you're working with to get the contract or that you're, going back and forth on the contract, your point of contact for the project is not your invoicing person. So you want to actually ask them, is there somebody in finance that we should be in direct communication with, or do we invoice to you? Just start learning their systems because each organization is different. Plan for 30 to 90-day terms for these types of projects. And if there is prepayment, then you can get that mobilization and then really try to time it to get a middle payment and an end payment, or just if it's not a super long project, really try to have invoices like in before even you're done.
Yeah, and I have heard from other targeted grazers that sometimes they're waiting 9 months just be for the first payment because of the fact that they didn't have this prepayment option, and perhaps they submitted an invoice halfway through the project. Maybe they're already several months in, expended a lot of money, and they're waiting for payment 9 months later. That can
Right.
be a real heartache. What what do you do? How do you handle that as a target as a business operator? Some of these long delays in payments.
Cry and pray. I don't know. It's like every business, small business, but we have like living assets.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. I've been in this a lot, and I work with a lot of people and train people and share what I've learned. And I can't say that I've figured out and nailed the cash flow thing. It's incredibly hard. So I think that my biggest, like, how do I get through? Well, it depends on how crazy. I mean, been hit with 1 to 2 natural disasters every year I've been in business, and we have endured. And so resilience is a huge piece. But my biggest recommendation is if you are able to really develop a good relationship with a reasonable lender, a line of credit is in very important. Not a credit card, but a
Mhm.
line of credit through a bank that understands what you're doing and why you're doing it, and try to get the lowest interest, of course, for a line of credit for emergency purposes.
Mhm.
You also can always you don't want to do this for the balance sheet, but you can always sell some animals, to cash flow certain things. It's not great, but in emergencies, in a pinch, you do have living assets. Follow the markets, see when your ethnic holidays are happening. You might be very surprised that you could get twice as much on the hoof than you bought the animal for at certain times of the year. Again, it's not my favorite thing, but that is in a pinch. I do have animals to sell.
Good. Well, that's great advice. I am just looking at the time. I want to make sure we have time to cover this bidding process. But before that, while we're still on this topic of financial aspects and contracts, um, California Wool Growers Association, Targeted Grazing Committee is creating a template for contracts, correct?
Yes, yes, the California Wool Growers Association, if you're not familiar, is the oldest agricultural association founded in 1860. I know this because I did a very big history project on it and I love it. Uh, and
Awesome.
there's a targeted grazing committee, and we invite not just sheep operators, and you can have hair sheep. We come on in if you got goats too. We have a really great active committee, and what we're doing right now is finalizing a template for targeted grazing contracts, which can become your own contract that you share with for private uh, jobs, but also that could be something that you share with an organization or agency that's new. Um, Thank you, Sue.
Perfect.
You're putting some good things in. Oh, Dan Macon says 50 years older than the California Cattlemen's Association. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. So what is it, like 100 and 50 years? More than 150 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Dan might know, but all right. Okay, after covering a lot of the typical scenarios or more common scenarios and working with grant funded projects, I want to maybe transition a bit to some of the more unique scenarios that might be encountered. Um, and we know that not everything goes according to plan, right? Well, maybe it does with coal. I'm not sure, but especially with timelines. What have you seen regarding grant timing delays or other types of delays, and how do such delays affect your targeted grazing activities?
Yeah,
So delays like the funds don't get from the federal government or the state government to the entity that received the funds or received the grant.
yeah.
What's happened?
This is really important. This is really important. And it seems like some of you are already savvy based off of some of the comments. Intricacies unique to grant funds, reporting, environmental review, monitoring, and the prep work before the grazer even gets on the ground. A ton of work has to be done depending on the scope of the project. Yes, depending on the scope of the project, it will require quite a bit of pre-planning. So let's say if Fire Safe Council receives an award, say you got a lot of money for this project. Well, guess what? It might take a full year, calendar year, before a grazer can even get on the ground because of environmental review. So just understand that if you put in a proposal for an RFP, say at the end of grazing season for us, it's like October for a spring or summer. They really do have to have a lot of their work already done to ensure that we can do that. I actually asked them, they said, well, we're going to we'll do the site visit in early spring. I said, no, 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 no. We already have contracts lined up, multi-year contracts. If you don't get us out there before the end of the year, but you just missed a full season. So they actually, upon my request, bumped things up. So just know everything's going to take time. And the biggest component is environmental review. Should there be the project be required for environmental review? Unfortunately, this last project, just understand changing tides at state level on the environmental piece, anything with the chaparral or scrubland ecology right now, that is managed by CAL FIRE. There are increased sensitivities on the ecological side due to some litigation with the Chaparral Institute. There are a lot of really big changes on what is able to happen without extensive environmental review, which we'll go through a little bit. So just understand that to finish that story, uh, I got an announcement that we were awarded the project, then got an announcement that, oh, two-thirds of the project may be cut because of this environmental situation. Oh, no, we got it covered. We're good. We're on. And this is all within, 60 days before we start. So the project's either 60 acres or 300. How do you plan around that? So that's something you have to understand, even if there is good intention by our clients, they are at the whim of what is going on in the landscape at state level.
Yeah, I can see delays having some significant impacts. I mean, you may have provided a bid for a job that maybe was to graze in the spring or late spring, early summer. And if it gets delayed and you're perhaps grazing you're in summer, late summer, that has big nutritional impacts or consequences
Absolutely.
and cost
Yeah.
consequences as
Yeah.
well. So yeah, delays can be very disruptive in a lot of financial aspects and just keep making the project uh, profitable for a targeted grazer.
I'm going to add to that real quick, Morgan. I know you want us to move forward, but
Yeah,
I got to say, what if you put in the proposal to graze at a period of time where you know you can graze an acre a day?
yeah,
But it changes to a point where the project gets bumped, and then you have to graze at another time of year where you're grazing uh, a half an acre a day. That just pushed out the duration of your project. Say
yeah,
that you had 30 days planned, and now you have to do the project that's going to take you 2 months. Well, every day is an expense, right? So you essentially just expanded the expense by 30 days of whatever your overhead is for 30 days by 100%, right? If I did the math right,
yeah,
100%.
yep.
Um, and so your margin just shrunk big time because of this delay. So again, it's nice to have a backup plan, nice to have a place that you can go and graze, ideally get paid to graze if there are those delays.
And would there be some language that you can put into a contract that would protect you in those types of situations?
Yes. Yes. I think that the deposit is a really great mechanism to kind of cover your bum on that one. I don't have specific language on delays. It's kind of hard to have a contract signed um, with those contingencies when the project is still, yeah, when you haven't been delivered the contract, you're just in
Yeah,
communications. It's kind of hard to negotiate
mhm,
that.
right, right. And yeah, Dylan posted almost like margin protection. I'm not sure
Yeah.
exactly what margin protection is, but it sounds like it might be right. Um, okay, another a unique aspect of grant funds is that they always have a certain time duration, right? Maybe 2 years or 3 years, maybe 5 years would be a long grant funding cycle. So what typically happens once the grant funding has ended? Does the work stop, or does the organization typically try to find additional grant funds or another way of funding the grazing? Do they continue grazing? Do they do other types of vegetation management? What have you seen that typically happens in those situations?
A 5-year contract is pretty long. This is something I haven't seen. I've seen a 2 or 3 year with an extension, but 5 years is quite a bit. And 5 years and in this type of climate, in all kinds of climates sense, is pretty wild. So I haven't seen the 5 year. But if your grant duration is 3 years, usually, depending on how the project goes, if it goes well and there's a lot of positive public perception, that is a very interesting moment in time when you have the public behind you, you have you have public interest, which means in our context, we have public dollars that our community wants to continue to fund, and in fact, cost matching for the continuation of a project is a possibility. It's not the grazer's job to go out and fundraise for your organization, but you are a partner, and showing up at community events, your fire safe council, fire resilience, awareness day, whatever is really good. What we've found is that even if there is grant funding that is trickling out or has a end date, that is actually a moment where an organization can hype, hey, our grant funding is ending. You want to still see this? Come to our Goat-toberfest or Goat Fund Me campaign. And now we're seeing actually neighborhoods coming together and finding and pitching in sponsor a goat, these types of things, um, to keep things going on. So you are notified, of course, of when a grant is going to be ending, but you can always ask them, what's your intention after the grant?
Perfect. Um, all right. I have two more kind of primary topics. And I think well, there were actually three, but yet we already addressed quite a bit of the capacity to do a job.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I'm gonna kind of skip that one. Next two, and I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for the in 15 minutes for the bidding process, preparing a bid and submitting a bid. But first, before we get there, on this topic of understanding agency requirements, such as environmental reviews and other aspects that limit liability for all the parties. Would you be able to quickly go through that? And I think you have a slide that you want to share for that. I think that's important to understand that some of the bidding information too.
correct. Okay, this is fun. Uh, I think it's important for us to be savvy graziers in understanding what our clients who are grant funded need to go through, what their process is to even uh get a call out to us or an email out to us to even send us an RFP. This is a huge component for state funded projects. Environmental reviews are critical depending on the impact or disturbance of a landscape. This is not bad. This is good. It's to protect our open spaces and our natural resources. So we just have to kind of pull the reins on being annoyed of environmental review and regulations because it has the best of intentions, and these are important. This is an important process. So there for an agency to propose a project, there needs to be there's basically kind of criteria or a checklist of what makes a project what kind of environmental review is necessary. You have three major ones. A notice of exemption, which is the lowest review, the streamline one, the one that you hope that the project qualifies under, really. Um, and in a lot of ways, prescribed grazing, targeted grazing, is not this type of everlasting long disturbance that the state is trying to protect. Listed species, for example, our prescriptions and how we graze, we can work with the environment. We can work with these systems and processes. So we're not having a forever impact on these things. So notice of exemption is one of them. The Let's go to the hardest one, CEQA. CEQA takes a long time and it's very expensive. You can see I'm kind of like, "Ugh." It's because a lot of the money on these projects, well, I just know what these environmental consultants make. Sorry if you are one of these people. Um, so the CEQA is a lot. It takes a lot of time and it's a lot of money. Go onto the website and learn what qualifies a CEQA versus an NOE. And the middle one is called the Cal VTP EIR. It's a programmatic vegetation treatment program. I don't know the acronyms. Anyways,
That sounds
this
right.
one,
Vegetation
yeah,
treatment
okay,
program.
good. So this one is kind of it's the middle of the road. It's great too. But let me tell you, this is insider information because I just was on a call. Insider information, it's also public, so it's not illegal. This is recorded. Um, there is an update happening right now to the Cal VTPEIR, LMNOP, which means that are going to be slight modifications. And now is the time. There will be a public comment review period of the update at some point. And at that moment in time, it's going to be really important for us to look at it because the people who are writing these updates do not know prescribed grazing. So I've actually been sitting on calls with at state level to look at some of the new guidance and guidelines. Prescribed grazing is such a unique thing. So there is an update on the Cal VTP EIR. I suggest you have a fun time on a Saturday morning studying it, just to be savvy. If you know the language, you know what your clients have to go through on the environmental review side. It really sets you apart. So screenshot this or wait, you get this. This is just a little lots of words on a slide for you with information.
All right. So with that, we could also we can kind of advance in like 9 minutes to the topic of how to bid a job. So once you've decided that you are going to provide a bid on a job, how do you go about preparing and submitting a bid? And I think you have an example to share with us, correct?
Yeah, I'm gonna go warp speed for you, Morgan.
Okay.
Okay. How do you prepare a bid? Well, I think that the best thing for me to do is show you very quickly. Um, Raise your Zoom little hand if you've ever uh if you've ever seen an RFP or if you've answered to an RFP. Do we know what an RFP is? It's called a request for proposal. This is something that you want, yeah. This is something that you really want to know and you want to have them. You want requests for proposals because that means that you can get a job. Okay. I will just run with this here and here. Okay, so in preparing a bid, this is a request for proposal from a Fire Safe Council in Ventura County. I think it's really important just to take a moment to look at what the background information they provide you uh, to prepare your bid. When you are preparing your bid, they're going to ask for certain aspects to be provided, like qualifications, etc. Your format for the bid, just take the table of contents and just move through it using the table of contents. So what you'll see, the background of the project, right? Uh, Background, I'm not going to go through all of this, the scope of work. I think I could provide this. I'm waiting for the Fire Safe Council to be sure that it's okay to share, but I think they did a really good job on this. They highlight stuff because they know that us grazers might not read it all very fast or well. No, this was very helpful for me. We're using technology called Survey 123. It's required by the grazer to use that, and their biological monitors are also using that.
Is that an app?
Yes,
Okay.
it is a ArcGIS app.
Okay.
If oh, Teddy. Oh, that was my dog. Sorry. Survey 123, ArcGIS. If they require you to use that stuff, make sure they pay for it. So I'm going to just jump on from here, but this is what an RFP looks like. It's a lot. This is what they're asking for in the requirements of the proposal. This is all, it's all provided in exactly what you want. Make a template of this and keep it so you can copy and paste it into new proposal every time and save some time. Uh, and give me 2 more minutes. Okay. I wanted to show you. So we have the RFP. From the RFP, um, we start looking at the qualifications or the requirements, such as your insurance requirements. I'll go here. Um,
And that's
it
always in the RFP,
In
correct?
the RFP, it will stipulate your insurance requirements. They will say, we need a COI. Will you send over a COI? What is a COI? Certificate of Insurance. Um, this is very standard commercial general liability, automobile liability, and workers' comp. I've been seeing these go up quite a bit. Right now, I'm holding a max of 2 million on my general liability, but typically everything else is 1 million coverage. This is a large expense. This should be definitely understood and considered in cost of doing business. Um, and whatever it costs you to have this liability, remember, you're going to have to fold that into your dollars and cents and what you're charging. Uh, I cannot press this into your brain anymore. Harder, sorry. It's that time of day and I'm trying to whip through this. Remember your true costs of doing business. That means you're not making money every single day of the year unless you're a magic unicorn and you have someone paying you 500 bucks an acre when it's raining. Maybe you are, I don't know, but that's not me. So take into account when you are bidding a job, that cost is not just for that one day or 1 week or one animal that's grazing. It is for the whole entire year that you exist as a business. Remember that. When you start thinking that way, then your $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 a day or an acre. And forgive me, I don't know your scales, so these numbers might be wacky, but it's really important to remember those things. This is a little bit small, but what I do want to point out is when you start understanding the costs of doing business, your wages and expenses, be it H2A, yourself. the kid down the road that you're paying above board, um, project management, supplemental feed specific to this project, minerals and supplements specific to this project. Do you have to have a dog, an additional dog? Um, you have to look at what is the overarching all of the business, the operational costs, but then also anything additional for that particular project because every project's different, um, such as mileage, such as having to pay for water instead of being given water. So in the bidding process, the scariest bit is bidding it correctly. Do not underbid. Be honest with what works for you. Take don't be a price taker, be a price maker and find the right project for you at the given point in moment in time of where you are in your business and recognize the importance of grant funded targeted grazing projects because I truly believe that it will be a very significant stabilizer in our industry. Thank you so much for listening to me for a very long time. Morgan, 2 minutes to
Hey,
despair.
that's awesome. Perfect. Hey, I do have a clarifying question.
Yes.
So when you were talking about you are trying to capture or maybe allocate all your costs for your jobs or you're trying to cover your 12 months of the year expenses in your jobs. So that is referring to the fact that you have the animals 12 months of the year. You have to take care of them 12 months of the year in order to maintain your targeted grazing business, but you're only grazing maybe 6 months or 8 months of the year. And so you have to try to capture all of those expenses for the whole 12 months during those 6 or 8 or 9 months, however long you're doing the targeted grazing jobs. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly I mean that's what we're having to charge for is the duration, the whole entire year, not just that one day.
Yeah,
So for every day that you're working, you really have to charge for the day that you're not working as well.
right, right. To
That I mean,
maintain a viable business throughout the year.
right. It's not necessarily charging the client for paying for something that they're not it's not a service they're not getting. That is what it just co that's what it costs you to do business. That's
Right.
cost of goods, COGS. It's just very standard. But yes, thank you for drilling that in. That's very important.
And just a comment that Ashley put in about landscape block grants are coming. I know we're already at the 7:30 mark, but thank you for putting that in. Cole, anything to say on that?
Block grants, if you are a part of an organization that can receive these types of grants, there is a new round of this block grant comment period, meaning the receiving of funding to actually disperse the next like kind of layer of grants.
Okay, so like an RCD or something, receiving a grant that they then provide subawards.
Yes,
Okay,
which I believe could be private landowners, in fact.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Well, Cole, I know we with 7:31, Cole, that was a lot. That was amazing. Thank you so much. Really incredibly appreciative of you doing this, taking the time. Um, yeah, it's asking a lot. You did a fantastic job. And thank you. Great way to like cap off our whole series of 10 webinars. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for bearing with me, y'all. I appreciate your time and happy grazing, graze against the machine. You heard, remember who you are, what you represent, shepherds unite, all of those things.
You're
And
here. All
Teddy
right.
says hi.
Hi, Teddy. Oh, I love that guy. I got border collies, really good border collies. If anybody needs a border collie, let me plug you.
All right. Good night, everyone. We'll see many of you on Saturday.
Take care, everyone.